So this first battle right here, I sent out my Grimmsnarl while he sends out his Keldeo, and I decided the best thing probably would be to go for a T-Wave as he goes for Scald. It does pretty big damage, so I was like, I might as well just swap him out. And then he goes for Secret Sword. I don't know what he was expecting here, so I just go for my own Scald on this Hippowdon, which is, again, perfect. Kind of. I mean, he took that really well, like really well for being a Hippo. And then you can throw his own Stealth Rocks, whatever, I don't really care. And then I just go for the Rock Polish, trying to get the sweep here. So this set I ended up changing later throughout the video. But yeah, it didn't really do me that well in this battle. I just get one-shotted by a Scald. I don't know what I was thinking. I was hoping I could at least get a kill. Right, and then I go for a knockoff here because I thought he was going to swap out, but he actually stays in, and I'm like, what the hell, bro? And then he goes for Air Slash, does pretty big damage, and I'm like, oof, I really should have gone for the Leaf Blade there, but I really thought he was going to swap. And I just go for a knockoff again because, like, I'm pretty much toast. I don't think anything's really going to hurt him as much, so I just get rid of whatever items he has. And then he just takes me on a high jump kick. And then I send out my Grimmsnarl, so I was like, okay, I'll go for the Reflect here. And he goes for Hone Claws, interestingly enough. I don't know why he didn't go for another attack. And then I just go for the T-Wave. Maybe he's trying to raise his accuracy here. Like, okay, 100% is trying to raise his accuracy. He's T-Waved. But he's still pretty fast because of the speed boost. So I decided to send out my Dragapult to try to eat up that high jump kick. And he actually goes for it. So I got really lucky. He doesn't take him out. I guess I could have, I should have known. And then I go for the Dragon Dance here, just hoping that he didn't really have anything for me. And he has Flare Blitz, which is perfect. So my Dragapult's a really good position right now, and then he sends out his Powdon trying to get the sand up, and it's like, I know these things are very defensive, but he took that Scald pretty well, so it's like maybe I could like get rid of him, and I couldn't. But he actually turns out to be Life Orbed, and so yeah, that kind of sucked. I hit him pretty hard though, so he's almost dead, and then I go for a Scald here, I think. Yeah, I go for a Scald here, just didn't want to take any chances in case he wants to swap out or something. Maybe, you know, if he goes out to that Draco's ult, I could get a burn on it. But, you know, he lets him go down, and then he does go for the Draco's ult, goes for the Earthquake, doesn't do enough damage. And then the sand is really hurting me. The Reflect being up is really nice, though. I think that's kind of what kept me to take that Earthquake. But then it goes away. So I'm like, okay, so here I'm gonna have to like slow it down a little bit. So he sends out his Gengar. I set up the Reflect. I don't know what he was thinking, and I just go for the T-Wave here because like I don't want to play any risks at the moment. But then he sends out his Draco's ult and eats up that T-Wave, and I'm like, fuck, okay. Maybe I can go for Darkest Lariat because he's definitely gonna want to swap here. He's trying to try to like wait out my Reflect turns, which I wasn't even thinking about it at the moment. I thought he was just trying to not to get paralyzed. And then he's, you know, stays in on the T-Wave, and he goes for Dragon Claw, and I'm like, interesting. I could go for a T-Wave expecting a Gengar, but I was like, no, if he swaps with the Gengar, the best thing to do would just be take out the Darkest Lariat. So I feel the Darkest Lariat was my best bet. And my Reflect turns are kind of gone. So he did what he wanted to do, and I didn't really like think about it as much at the time. And he goes for his Bolt Peak. I take it pretty well because of the Reflect being up. And then I hit the Bug Buzz. But I'm like, okay, I got the Quiver Dance. I'm done. I got this. I won this, right? So then I go for the Fire Dance, and this thing is sashed, bro. Sashed up the ass. And he just takes me out with the knockoff. So that was a really close battle. It was really good, though. I think it's probably one of the best battles I've had all day. But that Cortana being sashed was definitely a plot twist that I didn't expect. So, yeah, GG. So I lead off with Grimmsnarl while he leads out with Landorus Therian. And I'm thinking, okay, I'll just set up the Reflect. We're going to go for Stealth Rocks, and he does. And then I want to swap out because I'm thinking he might try to attack. And I really don't want to take anything. But he goes for Toxic, which was kind of interesting. I didn't expect that at all. And so now I'm Toxic, and I'm like, okay, that kind of sucks. I didn't want to go for the U-turn in case he was Rocky Helmet. And I wasn't sure if I was going to outspeed or not. And then I double out here and back into Grimmsnarl, thinking maybe he's going to go for, for that Earth Power, and he does. And then he goes for Nasty Paw. I go for the Light Screen, thinking he's going to attack, but no, he doesn't. And I forgot about the T-Wave not affecting Dark types, and I'm like, fuck. Okay, so he just keeps attacking me, which is probably the best thing that he can do, but luckily I got the screens up. And I go back out in line, I was expecting him to keep going for that Earth Power, and he does. And then I'm thinking, okay, so he's probably going to want to swap out here. But I was expecting the Landers to come out, and I just go for the Rock Slide because I didn't want to go for Earthquake and not hit anything. But he brings out a Scizor instead. And then he goes for Bullet Punch. I hard swap out. And my Toxapex just eats that up. He doesn't really care. And he goes for a knockoff, gets rid of my item, which is really annoying. But whatever, what can you do about it? So I go for the Scald, try to get a burn on him, and it happens. So I got really, really like lucky and happy with that roll. And then he goes for a knockoff, knocks off my item. But then I go for the Recover, you know, try to keep myself pretty healthy, and then it's like, okay, I can probably swap here, but then I decided to stay and go for the Scald, and he goes for Swords Dance, which is fine because he's already burnt. That's just kind of done. The only thing that sucks is that he kind of went through my Reflects and stuff like that, And thinking about it, I really should focus more on being a little bit faster so I don't lose those screens up, but it's fine, whatever. So let's go back into it. He goes for a roost. I go for another Scald here. He's only down, what, like, he was at full health, whatever. He goes for the knockoff again, and I go for the Haze here. I decide, okay, Haze is probably my best bet here. So he goes out and Tapu Koko, and I go to Volcarona. And I'm thinking, so the reason I made that swap, right? Actually, I didn't know. I just assumed that maybe the Tapu Koko comes out. And I'm thinking, well, these sends out the Tapu Koko, I don't think he really can do much. I don't think he can, like, one-shot my Volcarona or not. So he goes for the Thunderbolt. He does 50% damage. And I just go for the Quiver Dance. I'm like, okay, he cannot, you know, one-shot me. And I can even go for another Quiver Dance, but like, no, I can't get greedy. If I get critted, it sucks. So I go for the Fire Dance and I just finish him off. And then Slowking comes out. And he goes for the Future Sight. So I'm like, okay, this is not bad. So I go for the Giga Drain and then just recover some health. I honestly thought the initial Bug Buzz was going to take him out, but he was really bulky. And the Scissor comes out, probably just trying to get some chip damage with that Bullet Punch. And then I just take him out the Fire Dance. We all expected that. My special attack raises up, and I take the Future Sight pretty well. Here comes the Hydreigon. A Bug Buzz just does him in. Perfect. Alright, and then he brings that Landorus Therian, and I'm thinking, okay, can this one-shot him? And no, it doesn't. But here's the thing, he goes for a Toxic. All we had to do was go for Earthquake and that would have been done. No, and then I'm like, okay, I can live another turn of Toxic if I go for the Giga Drain here, and I do. And then out comes the Carbonite. Actually, he never comes out because he just forfeited at that point. So for match 3, he sends out his Ferrothorn while I just go for my Landorus. But I was kind of also half expecting the Terrakion to come out because I know they can also carry Stealth Rock too. But I just can't really touch him. So then I double back out into Volcarona while he goes to get the spikes up. I was expecting Stealth Rocks. And then out comes the Terrakion. I go for the Quiver Dance and I'm thinking, okay, like he doesn't know if I have Giga Drain or not, right? And I don't know if Giga Drain will take it out. But I'm thinking this thing could also be Scarfed. And even if it's like not Scarfed, if I don't take it out, this Terrakion just one-shots my Volcarona. So I swap out. And then I send out my Landorus, get the Intimidate off, and he goes for Stone Edge. It does so much damage. And I'm thinking, okay, this thing's gotta be banded. But I'm still, in the back of my mind, I'm still thinking, okay, it could maybe still be Scarfed. Like, I still go for Toxic Spikes. I try to whittle the rest of his team down that way. He's like, yeah, I don't think he has a way to get rid of him. And he gets the second pair of Spikes up. And then I decided to go for the hit right here. The thing is, I didn't want to go for another Quiver Dance on the chance that he brought his Terrakion out again, and he did. So I just go for Fire Dance, get my special attack raise. It doesn't really matter. At least he's poisoned. And then I decide that there's no way I want to stay in here. So I go back out into my Toxapex, who takes a little bit of spike damage, but it's not the worst thing in the world. And he misses his Stone Edge being banded. I think that, I don't know. Like, that would have done a lot of damage, but it doesn't matter. Toxapex is really bulky. And I decided to swap out here, expecting an Earthquake. And then I double back into Grimmsnarl. Expecting maybe like a Dragon Claw, actually. That's exactly what I predicted. And then I eat that up really nicely. I'm thinking, okay, he swapped out. I don't know if he has anything. I go for the Reflect, and then I go for the T-Wave. T-Wave is perfect for that against that Volcarona. And he goes for the Fire Dance, so it doesn't do anything against my Light Screen that I set up as well. And I'm thinking, okay, Volcarona definitely does not deal well against my Toxapex. And my Toxapex, I think I just go for the Scald here, right? Yeah, I just go for the Scald, try to get some damage on that Volcarona, and I was going to do a pretty good amount. And out comes the Haxorus, so maybe my Toxapex doesn't really mind Earthquake behind that Reflect. So I go for the Scald here. It doesn't really matter. I'm just trying to whittle this thing down and hope that the Poison puts it in range for the next turn for it to go down. And he goes for another Earthquake. I half expected him to swap out here. I don't know, but I just went for Toxic Spikes. But it doesn't really matter because, as you'll see, the Poison is really taking this toll. And after that Earthquake, I just went for Recover. just you know, give my health back, and then the Poison just takes him out, which is perfect. I kind of sold out some of my screen turns, but whatever. Then he sounds like Terrakion. I was kind of hoping that he might yeah, I don't know. I thought I could actually live it, but it doesn't matter. He takes me out. And so I sent out my Kartana, because I'm thinking Kartana is probably the best bet against them. So I could probably go for an easy knockoff. No, so I went for the knockoff, get rid of Conkeldur's Assault Vest, which is pretty fine. I was actually pretty good, I guess. Volcarona might be able to hit that thing a little bit harder now. And I just decided to go out into Dragapult, expecting maybe a fighting type move. And he goes for the Drain Punch. So Dragapult was definitely the play. He literally eats it up because he doesn't really care. And I go for Dragon Dance, like half expecting him not to have Ice Punch, and he goes for a knockoff. So I was like, I thought he honestly was gonna go for Ice Punch, but I still stayed in. I really should have swapped. I really shouldn't have stayed in there. And he takes a little bit more poison damage. Instead of my Grimmsnarl, because I'm thinking, okay, I probably set up my Reflect here because Conkeldurr hits pretty hard. And he does. So luckily I set it up, and then I sent out Volcarona because I'm thinking, okay, Volcarona could probably clean up the rest of this match. and the toxic damage is doing a lot of damage. So I think that I go for Quiver Dance here and let him die at the end of this round. He goes for a knockoff, which doesn't really matter that much anymore because I'm expecting just to stay in for the rest of this match, right? Or just do big damage. He sends down his own Volcarona, and I go for the Fire Dance, which does massive damage. I get the attack boost, and he goes for the Fire Dance, and I barely just hold on. And in hindsight, I really should have gotten that light screen up, but it's fine. What can you do? And I take him out with another Fire Dance, and Reunion Eclipse comes out, and I'm like thinking, okay, Bug Buzz. It does. It cleans him up. So that was really good. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm like 99% sure this thing is banded, but I'm still like on the fence. Okay, maybe he's still Scarfed, and if he's Scarfed, I have to go for Giga Drain here because that's the only way I win. And he's not Scarfed. And I take him out with the Giga Drain, get some more health back. In hindsight, it was pretty obvious that he wasn't Scarfed, but in the moment, I guess in the heat of the moment, I was just being a little bit more cautious. I saw his team, and I decided that I think Toxapex might be the best lead because I thought he was going to lead Landorus, but he leads Heatran, which is pretty interesting. And I was like, okay, that's kind of perfect. And he was for Taunt, and I'm like, that's fine because I'm Scald. And then for this next turn, he swaps out here into Skartana, while I just go for another Scald here, expecting him to kind of maybe want to stay in, maybe go for the Earth Power. And I'm thinking I might be able to, like, if that's a bulky Heatran, I might be able to take that Earth Power pretty well. But no, he just sends out the Kartana, he takes it pretty well. No burn, unfortunately. And then he goes for the Smart Strike, which I just eat that up like a sponge. And I keep going for Scald, hoping that I get a burn, and I do. So I'm like, okay, that's great. So now I got this thing burned. This thing's pretty much like dead weight. And then I'm just going to keep on going for Scalds here as he swaps out. Oh no, I went for the Toxic Spikes, that's right. I went for the Toxic Spikes. Then he goes for the Taunt, which is fine. I can't go for Toxic Spikes. So I'll just go for another Scald here, I think. Oh no, I swap out here into my own Kartana, thinking that he might want to stay in here to try to get some chip damage or something like that. But the same side is Landorus, which is perfect. I go for the knockoff, get rid of his item. And then he's going to want to swap out back into Heatran so I expected him to go back into his Tapu Fini, maybe predicting my Toxic Spikes to come in. So I just stay in and go for the Leaf Blade, but he brings out his Heatran, which was perfect for him, and he just eats it up like nothing because obviously he 4 times resist. And so I'm like, okay, I gotta get out of there. I wanted to go for a Sacred Sword, but I don't know if it'll be enough to take him out, especially at that range. I have Expert Belt, but I don't want to gamble it, and if that's a bulky Heatran, I think he'll eat it up pretty well. So I just swap out into Landorus, and then I get hit with the Magma Storm. So yeah, so that does pretty big damage. So like, there's no way my Kartana was gonna live that in a million years. And I thought about going for the Earthquake here, but I was like, no, he's definitely gonna want to swap out here. So let's just go for the U-turn. I don't really know what he's going to want to send out, and I go back into Kartana, and this time I'm thinking, okay, so he's definitely not going to want to stay in here, but expecting the U-turn, I go for the Swords Dance, and then I'm like, okay, this is perfect. He brings out his Heatran, and I'm thinking, okay, so I think definitely a +2 Sacred Sword with Expert Belt should definitely take this Heatran out. And he gets a little bit of leftovers, and I just go for it. I just go for the Sacred Sword, wipe him out. Perfect, clean, cut. Okay, then I get the Beast Boost, and I'm like, okay, this is good. And he sends out his Tapu Fini, and I'm like, what the fuck? What are you doing, bro? And then he swaps out. He just hard swaps out in Halucha. I guess he was trying to get so obviously he was trying to get the Unburden boost, and that Leaf Blade does so much damage. I obviously do not outspeed him because of the Unburden boost, so I swapped out. I doubled into my Landorus here, and I know that he's probably gonna go for Acrobatics, and no, he actually goes for Close Combat. But the reason I wanted to go into my Landorus was because of the Intimidate and the Rocky Helmet, and it was enough to take him out. So my Landorus has done a pretty good job, and I think I don't really need him anymore, so I just let him get sacked off. He goes for the Ash Rod, I kind of predicted it. So I wanted to go into my Kartana, but I was afraid that this thing might be sashed. So I sent out Toxapex trying to pressure him out, but he just stays in and goes for the Swords Dance. And as I go for the Toxic Spikes, so I expected him to want to swap out here into maybe Tapu Fini, you know, afraid of a Scald Burn, but no, he just stays in here, goes for the Swords Dance, and I'm like, fuck. So and then he goes for another Swords Dance, and then I just go for a Haze. I'm like, get the swords out of here. And he goes for another Swords Dance. I just go for the Scalds here. I'm like, okay, I should just go for the Scalds. He went for the knockoff, does huge damage, and I go for a Haze, and I'm like, ooh, I don't know if this is the best thing for me to do. And he goes for the Triple Axle, misses, which is really good because I was able to get another Scald off. No burn though, and then he just goes for a Swords Dance again, and I just keep going for Scalds, just praying for a burn, and he just takes him out with a knockoff, and I'm like, okay, my wall is down, my Dragon Bolt can probably take him out, and he does. So I do outspeed, I guess. My Dragon Bolt is sashed, so I almost went for the Dragon Dance, but I was kind of afraid of doing that because Tapu Fini, and if he swaps into Tapu Fini on my Dragon Dance, like I'm gonna have to swap out anyways. So then I just double or go back into Grimmsnarl. He can take the whatever he wants to throw. I mean, he goes for Draining Kiss. If I had gone for Moonblast, that would have done way too much damage. And then I get the light screen up, so I'm like, okay, I can definitely take another Draining Kiss here. So then I just go for after this turn. Oh no, okay, so he swaps out into Kartana, and I go for the Reflect because I'm afraid of Kartana still. And because of the Reflect and the Kartana being burned, that Sacred Sword does nothing on me. And I'm like, okay, this is actually really good for me because I can just like stay in here and just keep spamming attacks, but he just quits. So there we go. Grimmsnarl putting in that work. You know, I finally finished a match that's not Volcarona, and let's just go to the last battle. Nobody ever leaves out with Landers anymore. What the heck? So I always send out Toxapex on the Lando because I know I can take Earthquakes really well, and the best case scenario for me is I go for a Scald and get a burn. But whatever. So first turn he swaps out of Melmetal, so I'm thinking he's probably afraid of that Scald burn. So pretty good. Yeah, I'm just gonna swap out here, and I go into Grimmsnarl as he goes for a Nature's Madness. I was like, okay. He's definitely afraid of that Toxapex, and I just set up a Reflect because I expected him to want to swap out here, as he does. And he goes into Null Metal, and I'm like, okay, he's probably gonna go for Double Iron Bash. Let's go Landorus so he can injure himself with a Rocky Helmet, and I get the attack drop. That did a lot of damage, so I'm like, I don't know if that, because after that Intimidate, like, so Reflect up, the Intimidate went off. At this point, I'm thinking, okay, this thing's got to be banded because I just did way too much damage. So he's gonna want to swap out here and just Landorus, get the Intimidate off, as I just go for an Earthquake because like I didn't want to take any risks with that double. I didn't want to take any risks with that Mill Metal. Then I go for my Stealth Rocks. He goes for the Defog, and I'm like, okay, that kind of sucks. Then I go for my Stealth Rocks again, as he goes for a Toxic here, and I'm like, yeah, that kind of sucks. But what can you do? So I just go for a Stone Edge, get that crit, which was actually pretty big, as he goes for a Defog here. So my Landorus, I'm thinking, okay, I don't want him taking any more toxic damage, so I'm just gonna U-turn out of here. And then I swap out into Toxapex on his Defog, which gets, yeah, it doesn't really matter at all because I just got out of there. And then he's gonna send out Tapu Fini on my Scald, I think, here. Yeah, so I go for the Scald here. Obviously does nothing. And I'm like, okay, what can this Tapu Fini really do to me? So I just stay in here. So he goes for a Whirlpool, and I'm like, oh, okay, oh god, now I'm stuck. I went for the T-Spikes because I don't know, I thought that, I forgot about Nature's Madness as well. But I just go for the Recover, and I'm like, oh shit, that's right. I'm really not in a good position. And then he goes for the Taunt, so I'm like, okay, now I'm really screwed because all I can do is Scald, and Scald, he's just gonna recover it with leftovers as he can just spam Nature's Madness. And I'm like, I messed up. Yeah, I can only Scald at this point, and I'm just stuck. So I'm trying to like, I'm just hoping that I can, you know, survive this 1v1. I get a burn, which doesn't really matter. But yeah, I'm like, okay, my Toxapex is definitely gone here. There's nothing I can do. Like, I wanted to stall out the trap right, but I couldn't because I couldn't recover my health at all. And I just had to take those Nature's Madness to the face. And I'm like, fuck. But then my taunt ends and I actually break free. So I swap out straight into my Grimmsnarl. So that was the best bet. And I can set up my screens as well. So yeah, so I set up a Reflect, expecting him to want to swap out here, but he goes for the taunt, which sucks because I just gave him my Grimmsnarl taunt instead of T-Wave at this point. I'm like, I don't want to stay in here against a Whirlpool, so I just swap him out. He goes for Nature's Madness on my Kartana, which is perfect. Because I think right here I go for knockoff, yeah, because I expected him to swap out here. I thought he would maybe want to swap out into Dragonite, but he just sends out Magnezone, which is a very interesting swap. I don't know why he would do that because I got a fighting type move. It's not like Magnezone carries Hidden Power Fire anymore. I didn't consider Body Press at all during this actual battle, so I just stay in here, go for the Sacred Sword, clean him. Clean him up, and I'm like, okay, well, I don't want the Dragonite to have a multi-skill attack. Dragapult could probably finish him off. And as he goes for the dual wing beat here, and I'm like, okay, nice. And so because of the Reflect, I managed to live, and I'm thinking I could probably send out Landorus, get an Intimidate off, and then maybe have him hurt himself with the Rocky Helmet. And I'm so behind the Reflect, so I'm hoping, okay, I hope I can live, and I do. I'm just holding on, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go for the U-turn because there's no way he stays in. I didn't really know what he was gonna send out. So he goes for his Landorus Theory, get the Intimidate. It was perfect. I go back into Kartana, and I half expected him to stay in there and maybe try to go for a Defog. I just went for the Leaf Blade, hoping that he'd stay in, but no, he goes out on his Dragonite, which is actually really good for me. It doesn't matter, but the Dragonite goes for Extreme Speed, which doesn't do enough, and yep, my knockoff is perfect, just wipes him out, and I got the +1. Weavile is out, but I'm thinking I kind of want to keep Kartana around still. As he goes for a knockoff, and just, dude, I barely hold on my Toxapex. I'm like, holy shit, that did a lot of damage. I want to preserve him. So then I go on to Landorus, get the Intimidate off, and just sack him off here, which was, Landorus did way like more than I expected him to after being toxic and everything. I go back into Dragapult as he swaps on out, and I half expected him to want to go into his Landorus Therian, trying to get an Intimidate off, but because of my clear body, I managed that. And so I just go for the Dragon North, and he stays in instead of sending out Tapu Fini. So I don't know, I guess you could have put that a little bit better. As he goes for the Moon Blast, I wanted to swap out here because I didn't want my Dragapult to go down, as he just wipes out my Grimmsnarl, which is fine. I go for my Kartana, and my Kartana just puts in work on the rest of his team. So I go for the Leaf Blade, doesn't do enough damage, and I'm like, okay, I'll just go for the Sacred Sword. He should be in range, and he is. I don't know what the chances of him living that were, but yeah, so luckily I was able to take him out. I swap out on the Weavile because I don't want him to get killed. I still want to preserve the Kartana for Tapu Fini because I knew that Tapu Fini is kind of his win condition at the moment. My Dragapult can't really touch it. Luckily, the Weavile is poison and everything. I needed to waste a few more turns with the Weavile in to go down to the poison. So he goes for the Ice Shard here, I guess expecting me to go down, as I just go for Phantom Force. I expected him to want to swap out here, actually. I really thought he was going to swap out into his Tapu Fini. But no, he just stays in and lets his Weavile go down. It's like, okay, that's not too bad. The Tapu Fini comes back out, the Misty Surge is up, which doesn't really matter too much, as I get some pretty okay damage on that Phantom Force, and he takes me out with a Moonblast, which is fine. And I'm thinking, okay, I send out Kartana, go for the Leaf Blade, and let's see if this kills, and it does. Okay, so perfect. I did a really good job at conserving Kartana until the very end, and obviously, like, he just put in so much effort. Bye-bye and give daddy a little kiss.